Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so pumped to have you here today because we're jumping straight into this incredibly complex, but honestly absolutely fascinating intersection of tech and law. We're setting the stage for a really deep exploration into this magical moment, that exact split second where abstract, digital code reaches out and physically interacts with the real world. I mean, think about it. How does a line of code actually move something you can literally touch? Well, let's find out.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I know, it sounds kind of like science fiction, right? But what we're unpacking today is the literal architecture that makes this happen. We're talking about the actual mechanisms that allow a digital token floating around in the metaverse to physically unlock a real, heavy wooden door, or legally and physically transfer ownership of a solid gold bar sitting in a vault somewhere. We are bridging that massive gap between deterministic machine execution and messy, unpredictable physical reality.
To ground this all a bit, I absolutely love this phrase from our source materials, a record of sweat. When we talk about abstract cryptography, it's so easy to get totally lost in the math, but the protocols we're looking at today, they're designed to create a permanent, totally verifiable history of actual, real human work out at the physical leaf nodes. It mathematically proves that human effort took place. It takes the digital ether and grounds it right back into our tangible, everyday physical reality. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with bridging digital and physical, then look at the physical validator, enforcing real-world rights, the identity trinity, the JSON compatibility bridge, and finally, orchestrating reality. To build this metaphorical bridge, we've got to establish the legal side first, and then we'll lock in the technical side. Let's get to it.
First up, the physical validator, the legal anchor, and Liechtenstein. Let's move to and see how this builds our foundation, stepping out of the code for a second and straight into the legal vaults of Liechtenstein's TVGT law. So under Liechtenstein's TVTG law, there's this completely unique regulatory role called the physical validator. Because, you can't just have some code claim you own a physical painting. You need a legally recognized bridge. The physical validator is exactly that, a licensed, trusted third party. Their entire job is to ensure a digital token accurately represents a physical asset. And even more importantly, they ensure that the contractual rights to that physical object, whether it's a painting or a gold brick, are actually enforced under local property law. They're essentially the legal guardians of the physical asset.
And to show you just how seriously Liechtenstein takes this, look at the financial stakes involved here. If the physical property you're guaranteeing exceeds 10 million Swiss francs, you are required to hold a strict minimum capital of 250,000 Swiss francs. That is some serious skin in the game just to prove a digital token is real. The law requires this genuine financial backing just to ensure these validators operate with the absolute utmost integrity and security.
Next, let's talk about enforcing real-world rights, focusing on liability and the token container model. So the crucial point here is that because digital tokens legally act as containers holding real-world property rights, what we call the token container model, physical validators are held to incredibly strict compliance standards. The law literally recognizes the transfer of the container as the binding transfer of the rights inside it. So these validators, they have to maintain records for a full decade. They need special internal control mechanisms. And why? Because they assume total liability if a real-world asset transfer fails. If they say a digital token represents a gold bar, they must validate the serial numbers, the certificates, and perfectly synchronize the physical state in the vault with the digital state on the blockchain. If they fail, they are completely on the hook. And this brings us to the ultimate legal superpower of the TVG-PIO. The civil law basis explicitly states that the person with the power of disposal over the cryptographic private key is legally presumed to be the owner of the underlying right. Literally, holding the digital key equates to holding the legal physical rights. Boom! This is the rock-solid legal foundation of our bridge.
All right, so that's the law. Now let's pivot to the Ethereum network for the identity trinity, the technical anchor.
And this brilliantly illustrates the wider Ethereum ecosystem and these self-governing DLT communities. Complex standards like ERC's 7827, they don't just operate in a vacuum. They exist within these largely self-sufficient ecosystems. Understanding this helps us really see how specialized token standards shape the behavioral and technical rules of the network. They essentially act as an operating system for sovereign authorship, forming the technical side of our bridge. Okay, to prevent total cognitive overload here, let's break down the highly abstract ERC 7827 into what is called the identity trinity. It's essentially a three-shard stack. First, we have the mind pipe, using the ERC 721 standard, which acts as the ultimate root authority and global namespace. Think of it as the master record. Next up is the unified body, using ERC 1155, which manages all the complex hierarchies and collective roles. And finally, the individual shard, also ERC 1155, acting as the unique, irreducible coordinate for a specific agent on the network. Together, these three shards lock down digital identity with absolute deterministic truth.
Moving on to the JSON Compatibility Bridge, bridging on-chain and off-chain.
Now, you might be wondering, how do developers actually use this without ripping up the entire foundation of the current web? Well, the absolute technical genius here is the JSON method. When the on-chain logic updates, this JSON method parses the current state into a perfectly readable string. It creates a familiar, structured format, a high-fidelity integer geometry that mainstream web developers can easily use, pretty much just like a standard REST API call. And the absolute best part? It's completely backwards compatible. It links up seamlessly with those legacy ERC 721 and 1155 NFT systems we all already use today. And to make all this work efficiently, the architecture uses a strictly LIFO structure, last in, first out. By keeping the most recent update right at the top, a developer only ever needs to look at the very first index to get immediate bit-perfect proof of state. It's a huge philosophical shift, honestly, unlocking efficient single-entry bookkeeping at index 0. It's just such an elegant solution to an incredibly complex data problem.
Finally, let's bring it all together in orchestrating reality, the bridge connected.
Now, what's really interesting about this contrast is how these two anchors interlock. On one side, the physical validator bears the heavy legal duties, offline assets, and massive financial liability, while on the other side, the identity trinity handles the cryptographic verification, online, bit-perfect state, and strict deterministic execution. The beauty here is that to move real-world assets safely and autonomously, you absolutely must have both. Code without law is just a simulation, right? But law without code is just paper. Together, they actually orchestrate reality. And here is where it literally hits the desk, with something like the Cheerbot. This is where those physical leaf nodes finally come alive. When that bit-perfect JSON state updates on the blockchain, say authorizing a payment or a rights transfer, the Cheerbot reads it. It then translates that verified digital state into reality by triggering physical GPIO pins. You know, those little metal prongs that send electrical signals? It physically reacts in the real world, turning on a light, opening a physical lock, or moving a motor. It is literally code directly commanding the physical world.
We've moved from abstract theoretical blockchain state to a concrete legal and technical architecture that can literally sit right there on your desk and physically react to the digital universe. The semiotic bridge is completely built. The legal frameworks are in place, the technical standards are deployed and ready. So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to take away from this explainer. When these bit-perfect promises start orchestrating reality right in your own living room, what are you going to program them to do?